I'm going to show you how to make a text wrap around an object in Illustrator. So here I've got a bacon and eggs illustration, and I've got a two-column layout with text wrapping around it. And this is an irregular shape. So let me, first of all, let me just go ahead and delete the illustration, so that we start with our layout. I'll call this a layout. It's just for demo purposes. You could imagine if this was a more complicated layout, like a menu design or something like that. So let's go and get our illustration first of all. So I have my illustration open in another Illustrator file, and what I'm going to do is just click and drag to select all of the objects in the illustration, and then group these objects together, and then Command C to copy, go back to my layout file, and then Command V to paste. And then I can position this with a two-column layout. I like to position my illustrations. It works pretty well if you let the text flow on either side of the illustration. So I like to position these in the center. And maybe now's a good time to adjust the size on this. Okay, so that looks okay. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a path using the pen tool that I'm going to draw around the illustration, and that is what the text is going to wrap around. So let me go ahead and grab the pen tool, and what I'm going to do is make sure that I have the fill at none and the stroke at black, and just to work on this, maybe I'll have the stroke, the point size at 0.5, something really skinny. And then I'm just going to go ahead and draw my path to kind of echo the contours of my illustration. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can always go back and adjust this and refine it later. But, it's kind of following the rough outline here. Okay. So there's my path, and now what I'm going to do is go to the object menu and choose text wrap and just choose make. And that does make a text wrap, but we still have our little stroke here. So I'll just select that, and then I'll take my my stroke setting and set that to none as well, so now it becomes invisible. And then there are some other settings. So let's take a look at the inset. So there's a certain amount of distance that this wrap is or actually I'd call it an outset. Let's actually take a look at the menu. So object, and then let's go to text wrap and choose text wrap options, and offset is really the correct term. So there's an offset from that stroke. So maybe this offset is a little bit too wide and there's just too much of a gap. So we can just go in here, click preview first, and then we can just go ahead and see what happens. If we make the offset bigger, then the text is farther away from our contour or illustration, and if we make the offset smaller, then it gets closer. And I think since I already drew that contour sort of offset from my illustration to begin with, I really don't need much of an offset here, if any at all. So let's see how that looks. So, I think that looks pretty good. So now, once we have that, it could be a little bit difficult. Let's say we want to move this illustration and we just click on it and then we drag that around. The problem is that we have that path left behind and everything gets kind of all out of whack. So what I do to select both of these at the same time, remember I've got that invisible path with the text wrap set to it, is I just click and drag from outside of my text so that I select all of these objects. I've got my illustration and I've got my shape that I'm using as the text wrap, but then I'm also picking up or selecting the text itself. So I'm going to hold the Shift key and then click on the text so that I deselect that, And then what I can do is just drag this to wherever I need it. So, I want to reposition it on the page. Maybe I want to resize it. I could do that as well. So one thing you want to be careful with text wraps is just to see how the text is actually wrapping. If you get anything really awkward, then you may need to move the illustration, resize it slightly, change the shape of the path slightly, play around with the offset. It can be it can take a little bit of time to get it just exactly the way you want. Like right now, I see that there seems to be more of a gap on the left-hand side of my illustration than on the right. So what I might need to do is, well, I don't know, maybe if I move it, let's see, let's select everything. Yeah, it just has to do with the fact that there was a paragraph end here and there was a bit of a space. So anyway, that's basically how you do it. And if you, one thing is that if you do select the path that you use as the wrap and then the illustration and then you group them, then you get this sort of a thing. It all comes to the front. So that actually does work if you just want to group them around to move these objects together and then go back and ungroup it, and it should go back to the way it was.